Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm with Bizhan BJ Fazeli of Fazeli Cellars in Temecula. BJ, welcome to Wine Soundtrack, and tell us about Fazeli Cellars.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me. I mean, where do I start? We actually, my wife and I and the kids, we came over to Temecula in 2001 after seeing an ad for a 10-acre vineyard for sale. And we didn't even know where Temecula was. We were just living down the road in Irvine, California. And then came over, and then, wow, it's beautiful. I mean, we just fell in love with it. And then at that time, I was going up and down. I was going to Paso, to Napa, all over the place, looking to buy a nice vineyard and probably put a house on it. And I always wanted to have a house on a vineyard. Now, this is my house.
Yes. It's like a castle. Or a palace, I should say.
So, they call it Persian Palace.
It's a Persian palace.
So, yeah, and we came over here, we fell in love with it, and we just decided, yeah, that's it. We want to try to find something over here to perhaps that house away from Irvine. And when we started looking, it took me about probably a good portion of 3-4 years, and then by 2006, I finally found this piece of land, and we bought it, and we started grading and planting, and all
So nothing was planted here?
Nothing here, nothing. I was looking for a vineyard, and I bought a piece of land.
And how many acres do you have planted here now?
In here, we are on 11.5 acres gross, and then just over 8.5, about 8.5 acres of it is planted. Mm-hmm. The rest of it is the building and the road and so on and so forth. But the building we put over this is quite, as you have seen, quite substantial. We have just over 24,000 square foot of habitable, and we have about 40,000 square foot of patios and wedding areas and whatnot.
So you said you have 8 acres planted here?
About 8.5 acres
8.5?
here.
And so do you own other acreage?
Yes.
How much?
We are close to 50, 45 to 50. Some of them are owned, some of them are leased. When I say lease, we have a minimum 3 years contract on them. So we don't go to the market every year to buy grapes. We basically know what grapes we have and what wine we're going to make.
And how many different grapes do you work with, and what are you growing?
Oh, good grief. So on this property, on the winery, we have GSM,
okay.
Grenache, Mourvedre, and Shiraz. The majority of it is Shiraz. Then up there, behind you, that's my house, right there where the flag is. But anyhow, over there I have Viognier and Sauvignon Blanc. And then we have everything within almost 3 miles radius that we sign up for minimum of 3 years, and then you name it. We have Cap Franc, Cap Sauvignon, Barbera, Merlot. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Yeah.
Wow. And what's your total case production?
On an average year, probably 8 to 10,000. On a big year, it's probably about 13, 14. Mm-hmm. On a smaller year, like during the COVID, we did probably about 6,000, 5.5.
And you're 100% direct to consumer?
100% direct to consumer, yes and no. We are in a few selected restaurants. The rest of it is all direct to consumer.
So I'm curious, what is your first memory relevant to wine?
Can I say that?
Or were you 2 years old?
Yeah, not far off it. Not far off
No,
it.
your first memory.
No, my family always loved wine, and I had older brothers. I was the youngest, and every time I found it, I just dipped my bread or just had a sip or something. Yeah, I was very young. Very young.
Ah, well, I mean, it's got to start somewhere.
Of course, yes. And then later on, when we were living in, because we were living in London, and then we moved to Italy, we were living in Bologna. And at that time, we only had one child, and everywhere we went, people just have wine on the table, and kids, adults, everybody, I mean, obviously with moderation, but everybody was dipping in.
Wow. So I'm curious, having lived in London where maybe you drank wine, but in Italy where you definitely drank wine at every meal, and in all your years, was there one aha moment, one wine you tasted that was just so memorable for any given reason? What was that wine, and what did it change your mind on?
I have always been a lover of wine, but I don't know how much you know about the ancient Persia and Iran and where wine actually started. The oldest vessel of wine that is now on display at Museum of Penn University dates back to 7,400 years ago. And that was found in 1968, I believe, on the western side of Iran in the mountains of Zagros. And when the university carbon dated it, they said it's 5,400 BC. So living in Iran at the time, I was exposed to some really good wine from Rezaiye, Ghazvin, and places like that, and Shiraz. And when I started to study the history of wine and was fascinated by this vase and looked into the old depictions of Persepolis, I realized that when people were going to pay homage to the king of the king, Cyrus, Xerxes, Darius, and so on and so forth, they always brought with them some wine, some gold, and some goats. And that's exactly what it is on the stairs of the Persepolis. If you look at the depictions, that's what it is. So I dug deeper and deeper and realized that during the Zoroastrians, which was very early monotheism, believing in one God, they had wine all the time during their ceremonies, during their dinner, so on and so forth. So I suppose it started back in Iran, but then as I came out, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to some really good wine around the world.
So is there one memory of a particular wine you drank where you just said, oh my God?
I'm not prejudiced. I love wine.
Every wine you drink is, oh my God.
I always say that. Wine is not for drinking. Wine is for the experience that you have. And it's that experience which is the ambiance, the person you're sitting with, what you're eating, what you're listening to, etc., and what you're looking at. The view is very important, and that's why we have got view in this place everywhere.
Just not going to give me one wine there, huh?
I'm not going to promote one wine. I'm going to promote wine in general.
Okay, so if we were to come to your home,
yes,
and come into your cellar,
yes,
what do you have in your cellar? Is it all your wine? Is it all wines from Temecula? Is it from around the world? What regions? What would we find?
Yes, from around the world, from Napa, from Italy, from France, from the left bank, from you name it.
You've got everything.
I have a few. I used to have a larger home, and I had a cellar that fit 5,000 bottles, but since my cellar in here is even larger, so I just palletize them. But I have about probably 350, 400 bottles at home that I really enjoy. But Shiraz is one of my favorites, and I call it Shiraz because of the fabled city of Shiraz and because of the history of the wine and Shiraz, the city of Shiraz. I love it because it's fruit forward, it's beautiful, and when you put it in the right barrels and so on, you get all that smoky, you get the bacon, you get, everything that would make your mouth water.
So we'd find a lot of Shiraz in your cellar, clearly, but I'm curious, is there a wine you opened recently and drank, something from your cellar, maybe it was a Shiraz, maybe something else, that drank really well, and what wine was that?
So last night, funny you should say that. Last night, my wife and I, we had 2 pieces of, a piece each of filet mignon, and I just did very simple portobello mushroom, chopped it small and tossed it, and opened the bottle of our Cabernet.
Your own wine.
2018. And to my surprise, my wife kept bragging about it. She normally doesn't. And I went, but this drinks really well. Some of my wines at the moment drinking well, depending on the vintage, but in general, I am obviously biased about my wine.
Of course, but hey, you're 2018.
Yes.
Your own wine you drank last night?
Yes.
That's great. Do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
You know how many times I get asked what variety is the best, what wine is the best? My answer always is the one that you are drinking. Wine is one of those experiences that you, as I mentioned, you have to have the right moment with it. It is an experience, and it will take you through a journey. And for me, honestly, I love Cab. I love Cab Franc. I love Petite Sirah, Durif.
So if I was going to ask you as a wine consumer, red, white, or rosé, is the answer red?
All of the above. No, I'm a red drinker. Yeah, for sure, I'm a red drinker. But again, a couple of days ago, it was a hot afternoon, and I opened a bottle of my Vermentino, which is right in front of you, and I thoroughly enjoyed it because it's crisp, it's dry, it just explains that hot afternoon, summer afternoon, and I'm enjoying it.
I love it. Well, so, you're a direct-to-consumer winery. Scores probably don't play a big role. You've got a loyal following, people come here. But I'm curious, as a consumer or as a winemaker, what do you think of wine critics and scores?
I think it is actually very important, depending where and how and what you send. For example, we don't send to smaller events, and I don't want to mention names, but we are very particular about sending our Cab and Cab Franc to La Maison de la Cab in Paris or Citadel. And every time we send it over there, we come back with a silver. And so far, we send our Cab to and Shiraz, and actually Montepulciano. We sent it to London, the International. We send our wines to New York International. We do the San Francisco. We do Pacific.
So you enter them. So even though you're direct to consumer, you see value in getting your wines, in competing with your wines and seeing where they play.
It's not so much purely value. It's what I want to know as a winemaker, as a wine drinker, as an owner of a winery. How does my wine stand up in front of others? That's a personal thing that I do, yeah.
Well, for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure to try Fazeli Cellars wines yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Well, if you are coming to Temecula and you don't drink Fazeli, then you're missing a lot.
But like what?
First of all my grapes are from this terroir. As I said, within 3 months radius to the winery. And we make some really good wine in Temecula at the moment. There are some fantastic winemakers at different wineries. And I mean, the wine, I think, has got worldwide position that it could stand up on its own.
Mm-hmm. And specifically your wines? What do you think they say? Or maybe I should ask this. If space aliens were to land on your property right now, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with?
Oh, if they drink wine, I thought they were much more advanced and then they were into other substances.
But even in the most advanced cultures, wine always plays a part.
Of course. Well, obviously, if they are a white wine drinker, we have a selection of dry white wine. And we also, because you are in California, we also do some sweeter wines for California consumer.
But I'm asking, if you had to pick one wine, which of your wines would you want to say, welcome to Fazeli Cellars?
I always say my Shiraz is my signature.
There you go. See, I just had to nail you down on it. There are other wines you'll get to pick in other questions. Just stay tuned on that. So, you were talking about your dinner last night and having a Cabernet with the filet mignon. Seems like a natural pairing. I'm curious, how do you approach food and wine pairing? Do you think there are rules to follow? Are there certain rules you follow or recommendations you would give? Or do you not really care?
Funny you should ask that question. I have actually looked out of the box many times. One time we had a group of connoisseurs in here and writers, critiques. And what I did, I actually made a poached lobster, but I served the lobster with my reserve Shiraz.
Interesting.
Totally wrong, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what I did...
But you're going to tell me how it was totally right.
But wait, there is more. You know that line and me in my past. So what I did, we actually got some arugula and we smoked the arugula. Then we made some aioli of bacon oil and we drizzled that over the actual lobster and the arugula. So the first thing you get with the Shiraz is that smokiness. You get that bacon note and stuff. So the notes were already there. I even gave the guests an option of a Chardonnay, a stainless steel Chardonnay, if they wanted to pair it. And they tried both, and to my surprise, the majority of them said that it pairs with the lobster, pairs with that reserve Shiraz better than it paired with the Chardonnay.
Huh. And so the reason is because of?
We carried the notes. We carried the notes. The notes that you get in your wine, in your bouquet, we carried the same notes in the food and then we pair it. So ideally, some people think that if it's a white meat, you have to have white wine. If it's a red meat, you have to. But I can pair a Chardonnay, a Grenache, for example, for you, with a piece of pork or even chicken.
Yeah. But it's all about how you are preparing it and using similar notes.
Similar notes. As long as you carry the notes between the wine and the food, in my opinion, I think you always have a winner.
I love it. Well, I'm curious, you bought this property, you sought it out, you've planted it. You must know these vines intimately. So I'm curious what kind of relationship you have with them. Do they talk to you? Do you walk in the vines and do you talk to them? Have they gone through their teenage years where you had to reprimand them? Or is that a silly question?
No, it's not a silly question, actually. You'll be surprised how often you find me in here very early hours of the morning, where I am either walking among the vines or I'm sitting on that patio and looking at the most beautiful scenery that I have ever imagined in my life. Well, as I said, I'm biased, but it's beautiful. I mean, people compare it to different parts of the world, including but not limited to Tuscany. For me, it's Temecula.
But do you talk to your vines?
Do I actually physically talk to them? No, I have a farm manager. She talks to them.
So yours is all mental, and then she gets to yell at
Yeah,
them.
mine is visual and mental. You see, I'll sit down and zen, and I try to relay my thoughts over there, and so they can get it.
So you, you obviously you're the owner of the winery. You're not the winemaker. Have you ever made wine here? Did you start out as the winemaker?
Two answers. The owner is the bank. I carry the key.
Okay.
Anything goes into the bottle, I have to approve it. I am very much involved in finding the right grapes, getting the barrels. The process, no, I don't do a Lucille ball and roll up my pants and jump in it. No, I don't do that. But from start to finish, different stages, I definitely have to approve the taste before it goes one step further.
Well, so now, so you know these wines so well. You're involved in the blends. You know what you're putting out. How much variation do you see year to year thanks to vintage? I mean, we know that every vintage tells a story. We know everyone is different. Nothing's ever the same. But there is a lot of consistency here at the same time. So how much variation do you see in your wines year to year?
Even here, with all the consistency we have, and with the warmer weather that we have, and with the city water that we are using, and so on and so forth, it's still not manufacturing, so there's not going to be 2 years the same. This year, for instance, the fruit is looking absolutely amazing. A few years back, the fruit was looking fantastic until Father's Day. And in one day, we got 106, I think, in here. And under canopy was about 110, 112. So it just frazzled everything. So there is a huge difference every year. But in general, we seem to be riding on the coat of the Mother Nature, and Mother Nature is not frowning upon us.
And have you established any sort of rituals or traditions that you do for your team at the start of harvest to kind of kick it off?
Yes, I used to, for the first harvest, I used to take a bottle of tequila because they start about 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. But since COVID, things changed, so I'm not doing any of that. Hopefully from next year, we're going to start. And then we have obviously it's normally we try to have it at full moon, and it was when we were picking out our Sauvignon Blanc was my first one this year, right up there, and it was fantastic. It was really good.
So prior to being the owner of a winery, or the key holder of a winery, you had a different career. First, I want to know what you wanted to be when you were younger, what you wanted to be when you grew up, because this clearly was not your plan.
No.
But also, because I know this already, you just have to share with everyone what you used to do, because you had a famous tagline on television.
But wait, there is more.
For infomercial watchers.
Yes, exactly. So, as a young lad, I always either wanted to be an architect or an airplane engineer, you know, the engine engineer, to work on the jets and so on. But life took me completely a different direction, and I ended up doing accounting. I don't know why, but my math is very good. Or was good, still good. I always got into trouble with my math teacher because I had the answer, but I didn't show how I got to that answer. And they always wanted to see, and I always got C for the perfect answer. But anyway, yes, and I got into business from a very young age, and I've been an entrepreneur I started my first business when I was 13. It was after I finished my 7th grade, my brother had a shopping center, and my mom asked my brother to take me to work for the summer so I don't hang around with the kids and stuff and mess around. And when I went there, like 3 weeks later, I asked him he had an empty shop, if he would rent it to me. And I started, and that was because of my research, people weren't changing their light bulbs.
Huh.
The shops.
At 13?
At 13. So I walked into this shop and said, "Excuse me, sir, what's wrong with your electricity?" He said, "Nothing, I'm just too lazy to change the bulb." I said, "If I change it, would you pay me?" He said, "Yes." So I started doing that. I got a ladder, I went up the ladder, started buying bulbs and fluorescents and so on.
I have 2 light bulbs out at my house. You
There
want to
you
come
go.
and do it?
That's how it started, but forget about the fact that I had to go back to school, and I went belly up with that business, but I learned a good lesson.
Yeah.
A good lesson.
So where did but wait, there's more, come from?
Oh, many, many years ago. So I was as I said, an entrepreneur and retail. I was selling a lot to retail. And suddenly I found back in the 80s, President Reagan freed the air so you could actually have a half an hour program that, as long as you had 2 call to actions for 2 minutes each, then you can sell that or promote that as a program. Otherwise, with the cost of corporate advertising, it was absolutely impossible. So that intrigued me, and I started long time ago with a bunch of car care products, with car polishes and Ori, the fire on the hood, and so on and so forth. And then, if you remember, there was a car polish that came in the color of the car. If you have a red car, I give you a red car polish. So that was the concept of shoe polish put into car polish, and it was very successful. Since then, I've had many more hits than losses. And then when we bought this, I had promised my wife to retire at age 60, so I started winding up and then promoting this one.
But wait, there's more, because you have not stopped. So I am curious, when you're not working, how do you spend your free time?
I have a lot of hobbies. I'm a pilot myself.
Ah.
I have a plane, I fly. I ride motorcycles. I do off-roading with Jeep and other vehicles. And I just love cars, so I have a lot of cars that...
Like old collectibles or newer?
All of the above. My oldest is a 1923 Ford limousine, and my youngest is the one that I have on order, that is a Stingray. Next year is the 70th anniversary of Corvette Stingray, and I'm 70 next year, so I treated myself for my next birthday.
Wow. Wow. So you're treating yourself for your next birthday, but if you were going to treat your wife with a romantic evening, what sort of wines would you open up to set a romantic mood?
My wife is English. She's a gin and soda drinker. She used to be gin and tonic, and I'm vodka soda. So I converted her to gin and soda, which is less sweet. But again, we start probably with an aperitif, and then we go into the main course with some kind of a red wine, depending what. And again, I go to the cellar, and I pull out and debate this one. Okay, let's take both of them. You end up drinking both of them anyway.
Absolutely. So, BJ, when you look back at your life, would you say, is there a piece of advice that someone gave you? It could be a parent, a mentor, a teacher, a friend. A piece of advice someone gave you along the way that you either try to live your life by or work by, or I don't know.
This. I actually have been participating in a lot of mentor programs, and the one thing I always say to people is believe in your idea and never give up. If you think it's the right idea, it's the right idea. Just follow it through. Don't just dab into it. Follow it through and see how far you can get. And as long as it's a good idea, your rewards would be fantastic.
Well, I think that's a great advice to give. And as an entrepreneur, you would know that better than anyone. But I'm curious, is there a piece of advice someone gave you once that you try to live by or work by?
Yes. My mother. I lost my dad at a very early age. I was probably about 6 years old. And my mother, her advice was not somewhat of a direct message. It was more of a subliminal. So what she was doing at age 6, if we got into a cab, she would let me pay the cab driver and count the money back, the change back. So I took that as the best advice of my life, that she was trying to build something within me that would help me throughout my life. And there's a famous saying, if I give you a fish, I just feed you today, but if I teach you how to fish, you live for the rest of your life. Right. So those initial guidance of my mother really helped me moving forward.
And when you look back at your career, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date? You've had an illustrious career, so.
I have. So you see, this is my 9th career. And just like a cat. I thought cat was 7. No, 9.
9 lives.
9 lives. Honestly, when I look at business at 365 days, not day by day, not week by week, not month by month. And each year I learn more to move forward. And every 5 years I look back to see what I could tweak. And every 10 years I compare myself where I am to where I was. And as long as I have moved forward and achieved more, then I'm fine. But if I have taken a step back, then I need to relook at my life. So probably what I can show now is more than what I could show 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But when I was at a very young age of 23, 24, I had a very successful business. I was in melamine, Chinette, whatever you call it right now, back in the mother country. And I was very successful, and I thought that was it. But then suddenly revolution happened. I had to leave the country with 2,000 pounds in my pocket, and then go to a foreign country and learn the language and start a new life. And that was probably the biggest success of my life, where I moved to a foreign land and I made that home and I made money there, and subsequently moved to United States, and I lived the American dream.
Absolutely. I think that's a grand achievement.
Thank you.
So, complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
Oh, quickly. It's a naked person.
Okay, now I want you to use your imagination and your, knowledge from living in Italy about paparazzi. We're sitting at a dining room table here. We've got bottles of Fazeli wines on it. There's an empty seat next to you. Paparazzi are pretty excited to see who you're dining with. Who would that be? From any walk of life, living or deceased, who would you want to share a bottle of Fazeli Cellars wine with?
My wife.
Well, you already do that.
My kids.
You already do that.
Oh, what? Somebody out there?
Someone famous or personal, living or deceased, but not someone you've already had the pleasure to share a bottle with.
Yes. The gentleman passed away, but I'm trying to think of his name. He was in The Gladiator, English actor. I admired him for many years. And when I heard the story of his life, how he died, I was just mesmerized. His name was Oliver Reed. So apparently when they were doing the filming of The Gladiator, they were in Malta or somewhere, and he goes out to the bar. He was a bit of a drinker, and there were a group of Navy soldiers, sailors from England, and he sits with them, drinks them all under the table, walks out, and I think he has a heart attack and dies. But he was older. No,
Yeah.
he was magnificent. Some of his movies, I love some of his old movies.
Well, we know he would enjoy drinking your wine.
He would appreciate it.
So speaking about enjoying drinking, if you were being sent to a deserted island or to outer space and you could only take 3 wines with you, what 3 wines would you want to take? And they can be yours, but they don't have to be yours. I mean, from your collection, from your aspirational collection?
I definitely would take a Sauvignon Blanc for hot summer afternoon.
From anywhere in particular?
Well, New Zealanders are doing really good Sauvignon Blancs, but mine is not too shabby either. And it comes from my estate to my house.
Okay.
So I really like that. I like Shiraz, and then I probably do something like Petite Sirah.
So all your wines?
Not necessarily.
Oh.
A good wine is a good wine.
Right. So you gave me the grapes, and okay, well, I won't pressure you to pick a particular brand or region. We'll just stick with Petite Sirah, Shiraz, and So we play a little game at the end of Wine Soundtrack, because this is towards the end, where we like to pair wine and music. Wine gives us a sensation, music does. This can be very generic and general, genre related, but based on your wines, I'd love to know what it makes you think of listening to, or what conjures up. So, we've got your Vermentino here, which is, crisp and refreshing. And what are you thinking?
Probably something pop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with this one.
Okay. And your beloved Shiraz.
Oh gosh. With the Shiraz, depending on the ambiance. I mean, Shiraz, you can actually drink it with country, but you can also sit down and, relax and listen to classical music and drink the Shiraz. For me, they both do me well.
Country or classic. Okay. And last but not least, your favorite Petite Sirah.
Ooh, that's a deep color. That's beautiful. Those little berries. It's got to be something fiery, for sure. I don't know. I can enjoy that with classic, but I listen to a lot of classic music and country music. I just love both of them. One is playing forward, one is playing backwards to be happy.
So basically, country or classical music will work with any of your reds.
Suffices, yes. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Well, BJ, this has been great. I won't pressure you to do any more music, but I'm curious, what wine region in the world is on the top of your bucket list to explore?
I haven't been to Lua Valley, and I was planning to go there last month. Unfortunately, I was too busy, and I'm planning probably before next summer, because next summer I'm taking my wife and quite a number of our members. We're all going on the river in Portugal. Douro. River Douro. So before that, I actually want to go to Rhone Valley. To Loire Valley. I'm fascinated by the way that they are making their wines. I love their wines, and I love their cheeses. Both of them. Yes.
Well, okay, so while you start planning that, because you've got less than a year to plan that before your Douro trip, if people want to come visit you, how do they find you? What will they find here? How do they find Fazeli Cellars?
So it's www.fazelicellars.com. Our phone number is...
But wait, there's more.
Our phone number is 951-303-3366. But we are on the Portola Road in Temecula. The address is 37320, the Portola Road, Temecula, California. And what do they find here? On a daily basis, from 11 to 6 p.m., our tasting room is open. Every day, from 11 to 5, our kitchen is open. And then we do a lot of different events. We have like Thirsty Thursday, we do salsa, we're known for our themed parties. Masquerade Ball near Halloween, that's one of our largest. We have done Alice in Wonderland, we have done our New Year's Eve is also very popular, very, very popular, and we always do a theme. So this year we're thinking, probably because it's the 60th anniversary of James Bond, we probably do James Bond.
Nice. So, plan to come out here. You know, most of the wineries in Temecula do have restaurants on property, but what is great about Fazeli Cellars is that it is a very Mediterranean menu.
Yes.
Persian food.
Persian fusion.
Persian fusion.
It's Mediterranean Persian fusion. I have a lot to do with this. I love to toast and grind my own spice. And with every food, I think it's the spices that carries the food. For instance, this panar, I don't know if last time you had it. This is my own trademark, my own pattern. It's just my recipe. And when you have this, one bite, you have every sensation, every taste in your mouth. You have to eat it to describe it over the mic.
Well, I can't do that, but I am going to say that, BJ, it has been wonderful chatting with you on Wine Soundtrack. I hope people will come out to Temecula and check it out. Come to Fazeli Cellars, eat some really good food, drink some good wines, and I'm going to say cheers, because I want to eat the food now and drink it with your Vermentino. Exactly. So cheers.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.